I think CEOs should be replaced by AI. That makes way more sense to me. Because,
Mm.
I mean, if you think about what their job is, all these inputs they have coming in and have to make decisions on, that seems like a much better use of it. If you're looking at like how do you augment a company with AI,
Mm.
I would make the CEO an AI and possibly even like open source it to some of the employees. So you have this AI and the employees get to actually work on the model for the CEO. I don't know. That'd be an interesting experiment. We get
Well,
fired on day one.
we're all fired. Yo, what's up, everyone? This is the Shape and Design podcast where we show you how the world is shaped by design through story, strategies, and tactics, and maybe you learn something from that, huh? I'm Mitchell Bernstein. Today, we had an amazing guest, Jed Bridges, a good friend of Pascal and mine. We worked with him in the past, and this was one of, I think, the best episodes yet, really. We talked building in the Web3 space, building and designing his own studio, which is a really interesting topic. We also talked a lot about how AI and creativity kind of go hand in hand and impact each other. But also, we talked about a topic not often discussed, religion and design. So you're really going to want to stick around for this stuff. It's a great episode. But before you listen to it, remember our agreement. If you're on Spotify or YouTube or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this, please like and subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. We really, really appreciate it. It'll help keep this podcast free for you. And also you'll get to know when we drop new episodes. And I think that you'll really appreciate that. So we appreciate you listening to this. And now let's get into it. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Mitchell?
Pretty fucking good. It's great to finally see you and talk to you. Thanks for coming on the pod.
Dude, I'm so happy and excited to talk. It's been a while, so looking forward to it.
I'm actually going to pull up real fast some of the tweets. I asked the audience, our lovely audience, really your audience, not even my audience. I said, what should we ask Jed when it comes on the podcast? And some of them include, instead, just sit in silence, favorite Croc, and if Crocs made socks with the same circle cutouts, would Jed cop the Croc socks or not? And I don't know how to say that 10 times fast, but would you cop the Crocs socks or not?
I think philosophically, I'm opposed to socks with Crocs because if you need that kind of setup, you should just get the lined Crocs and they have a solution for that. So no, would not cop.
Can you explain this whole Croc saga and like why you're obsessed with Crocs, but like really like why are you obsessed with Crocs?
Yeah. It was never meant to be a big thing, man. But basically, I was gifted a pair of Crocs a couple years ago, I think for my birthday. And I just started laughing. I was like, these are not cool. That's kind of the general consensus. But I actually started wearing them. And where I live, there's lots of weather. And in the summer, there's a lot of swimming. And I don't know, I got to taste and see, right? And what I found was like, okay, these actually are super comfortable. They're great for amphibious, right? So I can wear them when I'm working outside, when I'm gardening. I can immediately walk into water with them. Perfect seamless transition. And they last a long time. Like the quality is pretty high. I don't know. I just like slowly started to fall in love with them. And so I started like tweeting about them too, because what I found, it's really around creativity. It's like, okay, you have this thing that is like universally not cool. Like, how can I talk about it in a way that is like funny and entertaining, but also there is like a truth side to it too, where it's like, actually do think they're good footwear now, even though they're like, they look funny from a utility standpoint. Like I like them and they work good. And then you pair that with the fact that I actually do think because their product is so funny and like universally not, their marketing strategy to counter that has actually been incredible to watch over the last few years. So like their stock during the pandemic lockdowns like soared because the theory was like people didn't care what they looked like anymore because they're home locked down.
Right.
So their sales actually soared. And I don't know who's on their and then marketing teams, but some of the work is actually really incredible. And I actually see them building a brand like nobody else with their partnerships, their brand strategy, their marketing is like really high quality. I don't know. That's how it started. It was like, how can you take this thing that's like, not very interesting or cool and then talk about it it basically is a forcing function for me to think creatively. So half the time I'm kidding, half the time I'm not. That's the hard part.
It's so interesting because like you're not just like I'm gonna tweet about it. You're like all in. Like,
Yeah.
but I want to pause there and go a little bit back in time to your background, kind of like where you came from in design to where you are now, and then we can dive more into the Crocs later. But we have a couple of topics to talk about. So why don't you give a little brief rundown of your history, and then we can get to that.
Yeah. So I'm old. I'm an older millennial designer now. I've been doing this a while, but I started designing when I was a kid, started playing music, got into playing in a lot of bands. And then like a lot of people, you start to need things designed, right? Posters, shirts, websites. So right at the get-go, I would say I went down a path of like design generalism, just out of necessity. You just need all these things when you're in a band. And so I took that upon myself because I found it interesting. I had been playing around with Photoshop at the time and kind of took it as an opportunity to learn more. And then when I was in high school, I actually like needed money. So I worked full time, but I had some bills that I needed to pay. So I started taking on freelance clients when I wasn't working at my part-time job, not full time. Sorry. It was a part-time job. And that was incredible because I was like, okay, I can wash dishes for minimum wage, or I can work on a computer and design these books for this lady for like $20 an hour. And like that blew my mind at the time. That
20
was
bucks.
a lot more than minimum wage. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what led me down a path of going to school for design. And then after that, I just kind of followed my interests and passions, which took me down a road of sort of bouncing between design agencies and startups. And then after kind of bigger orgs, larger startups and larger companies and organizations.
Nice. Nice. So now you are a master designer and a croc wearer. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So a couple of things we want to talk about because you also work, which you didn't mention, you also work in the Web3 crypto space, and you also kind of did a little project at your house. So let's talk about that first because I know that's top of mind. So you explain this. You built a barn as a office?
Yeah. Yeah. So I moved about a year ago and I've been working remote for a little over, I think 7 years now. And I've never had like a proper office. Like I'm looking at your office now, just like I clearly need to work on my background a little.
I can
um,
help you. I'll give you some pointers.
yeah, yeah. The office I'm in now is newly built. And when I moved, the property I now own had about a 400 square foot horse barn on it in a pretty dilapidated state, a lot of rot, and I won't get into the detail, but it was gross on the inside. So I was going to build a separate detached office from my house behind the barn. But after getting into some of the details of how much that would cost and how long it would take, I was going to bulldoze the barn. We just kind of decided, let's just renovate the barn. It would cost a little more, but it would be like 400 square feet versus 100. And so I essentially isolated about 120 square feet from my office. And it's like a beautiful barn now. The outside and inside has been completely redone. I have my office. I actually have a home gym right here. And yeah, it's pretty incredible. Oh, yeah, it was fun getting to design your own workspace. I still have some bookshelves to put up behind me, a few other things going on that I need some to get some art up on the wall. But for the most part, it's done. It's nice having a place that is only dedicated to my design work. So
Mhm.
that's all that happens here. I do have a reading chair for, in my life for reading, but for the most part, that's it. This in the past, it's been a bedroom and an office, or a guest room and an office, or a kid's room and an office, and now I just have an office. So it's been incredible. Yeah,
So,
it's insulated, it's warm, it's quiet,
tell
perfect.
me about like that thought of you said before you had like other things and the office because right now I took over one of the guest rooms in our house, and I just covered it in soundproofing and wood panels and lights and stuff, and it looks like a actual studio. But I'm next to a bunch of other things, and the laundry room can go off, and the dogs are barking sometimes, which I might have to stop the recording and like go tend to that. But it's it is nice to finally have my own space where I can close the door and then I can just do work. And then when I'm done with work or done with the computer, done with that, I can walk out and close the door again. And now I'm in a different space. So, what is like the importance to you of having designed your own space?
Yeah, well, kind of similar to what you just mentioned. I noticed, so I have two small children and a beautiful wife. Once they actually become mobile and start walking around and you can actually play with them and, interact in a lot of different ways, I noticed it was affecting my time with her to not have a really strong separation of work and life. And so, kind of taking it one step further, and just having a door to close, I was like, I need an office detached from my house. Like, I just wanted to make an extreme like separation between work and life with my family. And so that's kind of why it's like meaningful to me to have my own space is I work really hard and really focused all day. And then when I'm done, I can like close and lock the door and I walk about 30 to my house, right? And that's something I really needed like more discipline around. Before that, I would say like I have my laptop, I can work
Right.
as much as I want. I can move it from room to room. And I would find myself at night, like in bed on my laptop, just finishing up a few things, writing a few emails, just because I love what I do. I really love design. I love the team I work with and I like what I'm working on. It's a passion of mine. So I had to force a little more separation, I think, just because I am so interested in it and enjoy it so much. And that's been really good. I originally didn't have a laptop. I got a Mac Mini because I didn't want to be able to bring even a laptop into my house from my
That's smart.
office. Yeah. And I ended up selling it and getting a new MacBook Air because noticed there were times when I wanted to work on something like personal work for fun.
Mhm.
And that's when it was kind of a bummer to have to walk across the yard into my office, like say at like 11 at night. It was like, oh, I just want to like make a quick little logo idea for personal stuff and not like my day job. And so I just had to switch back to the Mac Mini. I'm sorry, switch off the Mac Mini to the MacBook Air. So yeah, I think I found a good balance now. I don't know, I almost like never work unless I'm standing in my office. And that was kind of the goal. That's what I wanted.
So now you built your own WeWork basically, where you can go to and then you
Yeah,
can do your
yeah.
thing.
I could fit a few people in here probably and start cleaning up. $25 a day, Mitchell, if you want to come work with me.
Oh, heck yeah. That's awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
There's no bathroom facilities, but I do have a small pasture if nature were to call. So,
Oh, perfect. Yeah. I mean, I don't use toilets anyways. I mean, awesome. I just, here's a carpet, right?
oh, I have so many questions. Okay.
Well, I'm interested to see your journey continue with this office. So keep me updated on that. I want to switch gears a little bit towards Web3 because that's the space that you work in. So
Yeah.
can you describe a little bit about what you do in the Web3 space? Just a little bit, and then we'll have some questions
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So I got into Bitcoin in I think around 2017 and quickly found it very compelling as a future technology I wanted to work on. So I got into the Web3 space, I think in 2018. And specifically, I was working at an enterprise blockchain company with an internal incubator. And so I got to work on about 6 different products at once, which was really fun. I like variety. But I was working on everything from like Bitcoin mining optimization software to decentralized security analytics, all kinds of enterprise applications. And there was also a consulting arm of that branch that I got to work on. So talking to Amazon about, how do we offer a decentralized composable server like product? And we did some consulting and stuff with them and MasterCard. So I really quickly got a ton of exposure to crypto and kind of immediately was sort of drawn to like, how do we get this into the hands of just everyday people? So right now I'm focusing on ramps and off ramps. So people just coming into Web3 and Bitcoin experiences for the first time. How do we make that really seamless and easy? So yeah, it's been a cool space to see evolve. I think when I first got into it, the joke was that we have like all these amazing products built, but there's no users, there's no user base. And you fast forward to now, and it's kind of reversed almost, where like a ton of interest in it. There's a ton of people that want it, but there's not a ton of really, really concrete use cases that people can, immediately apply to their situation. So yeah, a bit of reversal there, but overall, it's like a very exciting space to be in and a lot of
Do,
cool
do,
things going on.
do you find that there's not like a match of the use case of some of this Web3 technology to user needs? Like the technology is being built, but it's being built
Yeah.
almost like in isolation away from matching somebody's expectations, because most people don't care about the technology. They don't care about the servers
Right.
and crap. They just want to use Facebook. They just want to use Twitter. They just,
Yeah.
So is there like a disconnect there? Is that the problem?
I think the problem is that a lot of crypto that word gets bundled with a lot of things that aren't really crypto. And so I was just talking about this with a friend the other night. They were asking me about, crypto, and what you quickly learn is their understanding of what that even is not really correct. So I mean, just to break it apart a little bit, there's a couple branches of crypto that I think are worth isolating. One is, so what are the ideals and the big ideas and the why behind crypto? And I feel like what's missing is that is the hardest part, right? So people might not understand they have a use case for it because they don't have that why. It's like, why do we need decentralization? Why do we need open autonomous code? Why do we need better solutions for self-custody of your money? Why do we need these things? And so when you come to them and you say, hey, we have decentralized apps and products and services, and they're like, cool, so what? Like, I use those already, right? So I think that's the hard work. Is it just takes so long to educate on the why. I think we'll eventually get there, and it is getting more mainstream, the last few years. And I think so that's one thing, is just like we have to focus on educating people behind the why, and then they will see the use case emerge from that. We right now, I think there's an overemphasis on starting with the use case and the end product. And so that's going to change over time. But then there's also this other part to what you asked, that is, I think a lot of Web3 will just get baked into the background tech, and people don't even necessarily need to know that there's a transition that's happened. So with a lot of Web3, there just are superior, there just is superior technology powering under the hood. And that just will be, I think eventually just will get mainstream adoption. And people, for those instances, people won't need to know why. They'll just need to carry on as usual. And in the background, a massive change would have already taken place.
Okay, so that's interesting because it sounded like almost like the 2 points you made are not exactly, but they're almost counter to each other. Like you have to teach people why, and then they don't
Yeah.
need to know why.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the use case and adoption part, I think
Yeah.
people need to know like why this is important. And then in Web3 right now, I think what's most exciting is the layer twos that are getting
Can,
spread,
can you
if you
explain a
will.
little bit about that too?
What's that?
Can you explain what a layer two is to people who don't know what that is?
Yeah, yeah. So I think there's been a step back in Web3 in the last few months, and people are reevaluating like, okay, what do we actually need at an infrastructure level to make sure that the incentives get baked in properly onto the layer. And so by layer one, I mean like whatever core blockchain the services or application or use case is running on. And then a layer two is usually just some sort of additional technology that helps build a product on top of that. So I think what's happening now is, if you take like Block, for example, Jack Dorsey's company, they're focusing on the technological infrastructure for specific categories of Web3. So personal identity, that's one entire tech stack that they're working on. Payments, that's another entire separate layer two tech stack they can work on. And so those things, having a really clear focus, I think, are what is eventually going to just bring that tech into the background of people's existing experiences. If you think about banking, right? This is one of the things that brought me into Web3. But if you learn about how banks work and how money works, you start to realize how much is actually happening behind the scenes to settle transactions. It can take like 10 days, for some, you swipe your card and it feels like it's done, but it's not really. with Web3, you can actually process and settle a transaction instantly. And so institutions are incentivized to bake this into the background because of some of the superior aspects of it. And so, yeah, I guess that's a better way to think about it to more quickly answer your question. For service and application, I think users need to know why. But then for these like for institutional adoption, users will just continue to use those things as usual as it gets brought
So then what's the role of a designer in all of this?
in Web3.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, where do you see yourself
Yeah.
inside this big bucket of all these things going on?
Yeah. Well, I think the role of me personally, the designer, is to try to make sure that the incentives get maintained throughout the creation of the product in a healthy way, and that the core values behind Web3 don't get diluted as the products get defined and designed and built. I think we've seen a lot of examples of that happening lately where people started out well intentioned and, you make small compromises along the way and it doesn't end well, right?
Yeah.
I see, my role as a designer is we have this good thing that has the power for change if we let it. And so I try to maintain some of those core values and make sure those get instilled into the product, not compromise those things for the sake of growth or usage metric, which is very tempting. I also think on the design side, we need to come up with better mental models to even explain what these things are. So if you think about some of the ones we have right now, like a wallet, right? That's the common one. Is that a good mental model for a user with Web3? It's like, oh, your wallet holds things that you care about. So that's good. But if you open, say Coinbase wallet, there's a web browser in it. There's an app store. There's all these other metaphors within the metaphor. And so it quickly starts to break down. So that's another key role I see myself in, is trying to think through ways we can communicate this stuff that's cohesive, because the current metaphors just aren't working. And a lot of that is happening right now in like user research. And yeah, I would say primarily like working with research partners.
Okay. Nice. So for Web3, we already went through the biggest challenges, went through your role. Now, where do you see it kind of going towards in the next couple of years, especially with the recent like bank crisis? Like, it's a little bit of a bull run. People are starting to, freak out a little bit. I
Mhm.
think that there's like right now a great opportunity for whatever is Web3 and whatever is crypto to be like on the main stage right now to say, hey, there's something happening. Why don't you try this other product out? Not to take advantage of the situation, but like this is exactly why all this stuff was built in the first place, right? Like to
Yep.
prevent people from losing their money that is in fact theirs, that they earned, they spent time trying to build out, they put energy into the world to get a monetary value in return. Where do you see it kind of going?
Yeah. Well, I think in a lot of ways, we will see a return to some of the core values that, seem to have gotten lost. I think on a, from a personal user perspective, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And I see a lot of the recent collapses that happened stemming from just sort of this like hype greed sort of mentality. I think when you're risking your money, we're going to see just a return to just more conservative strategies. And I view everything that's happened this last year as a good thing, because I think we're going to see smarter investments from people investing in Web3 where they maybe weren't necessarily doing enough due diligence before. So we're going to see, I think, less investment happening in the space in a good way. And we saw this with Web2 as well. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but if you had like Instagram, but with stickers, like you could just get like $1 million, like to get funding. That's all done. That ride is over. And I view that as a very good thing. We need to refocus, and I think we need to return to like the basic ideas that, okay, what does this really empower and why? And so in the future, I just see a doubling down of personal identity, ownership, self-sovereignty of your data, transacting in decentralized and private ways, and then just improving legacy technology that we have now. So I would say the biggest thing is probably going to be the adoption of more stable coin usage into large financial institutions for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier.
Right. Okay. Cool. when getting into Web3, I don't know how much you really understood about Web3. I don't know if you mentioned you had experience kind of doing like an incubator thing where there's like multiple different projects going on at the same time. So you got your hands kind of wet or feet wet in that area where you're able to get a knowledge, like a huge knowledge grasp real fast. For those who are trying to get into this space, what would you recommend to them?
Yeah, I would say get familiar with some of these like new ideas and foundational principles for how to build a better decentralized web in the future and find which category really resonates with you and aligns with you.
Mhm.
I personally really resonate with the idea of just self-sovereign monetary system. I think that's partially because when I first started in the space, all of the engineering team I worked with was in Venezuela. And so it got pretty, I don't know, it kind of became more than just like my job for me, getting to know them. We spent time together in person, but these really talented engineers were building because they literally needed this technology so that they could transact as their primary method of money. So, back then it was building some stuff on Ethereum, and their local currencies were getting devalued weekly, like so heavily their life savings were just evaporating. And they were building in that mode. And so I became really passionate about getting people alternative monetary systems because that's just how I started. But I would just encourage anyone to just look at some of the core ideas, principles, and values behind the space and figure out, what resonates with you the most, like what seems the most interesting. Figure out what that is, and then just dive into all the communities going on around that particular category. There's so many communities online in Discord, on Twitter, even GitHub. There's some really great ones.
Cool. Thanks for that. I have a weird question, and I don't know how you're gonna take this one. I was thinking about it for a while, and I never asked you since the entire time we've known each other, but I really wish I did earlier on because I think that we could have maybe gotten further in the conversation. But if you don't want to talk about it, just tell me no. Like say
Okay.
no go or like pass or whatever. Religion and design.
Yeah.
Are you a religious person?
Yeah.
Yeah. How has religion influenced your design?
Hey, yeah, that's a good question. Well, at a high level, I would say as a theist, so I believe there's a God that exists, right? I think there's good reasons to believe that. I don't think there's good reasons to believe he doesn't exist that I'm aware of. So my view of God is one that is omniscient, all powerful, created everything we see around us. And to me, that makes sense of the world from what we see in scientific efforts, in like basically, we are uncovering information and knowledge over time through science. And the more we do, to me, the more we see that it all works together in some design sort of way, right? So why is the universe structured perfectly on this mathematical grid? Why does this all work and fit together? You can answer that question a few ways. To me, the most compelling and simple answer is it was created and designed to be that way. I don't know. I guess for me, to be a designer is sort of just tapping in to this structure and grid that is all around us and everything, and getting to like almost uncover and be part of that in some weird way. Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I've been
Ask more. Ask
thinking.
more. I
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
hear.
I've been thinking a lot about it because it's exactly what you just said. If you, I don't know if you listen to Andrew Huberman.
The name. I know the name. Does he have a podcast?
He does have a podcast. He's
Okay.
a professor at Stanford, runs a lab there, and does a podcast that he like
Okay.
teaches his own. For those who don't listen to it and that are listening to this podcast, you should go check it out. And he basically talks a lot about science, about a bunch of things about the body, right?
Okay.
And he recently did one on water, like answering a lot of questions about water. He does one about like muscles and tissue, one about skeletal system or the nervous system, and like even one for Thanksgiving, which I thought was really good about thankfulness and like how that can be used to like I think calm you down and like, make you feel more gratitude and like how do you actually get to that point? Blah blah blah. Blah. Anyways, what I love about his podcasts and his lectures are that they they don't tell you how to just hack the body to do something with it, although that's kind of like the goal of it, like how do you get bigger, how do you feel more fit, whatever. How do you be more emotionally in control? But it's almost like you just said, everything in the body was designed a
Yeah.
specific way. He's literally just telling you, oh, here's the door, and then I'm going to give you the key to open the door, and now you have access to all this information. But it wasn't a coincidence that all these things are happening and now they're just discovering it. It's like these things already existed, and we're now playing into it and seeing how can we manipulate it in a way that's more beneficial to us because we understand it more. We can become more healthy. We can become more fit, more emotionally intelligent, more just awake, more a better sleep. So I think it's really interesting that you said that.
Yeah.
Now, going back to design, because this podcast is called the Shaping Design Podcast because it's about how our guests shape the world through design and how design really shapes them too.
Right.
Shaping the world through design,
Mhm.
if the world is already designed and we are just uncovering it, why do we even have to do that? Why don't we just leave it as is and then enjoy it?
Yeah.
Because
Well,
everything we put out, sorry, I'm gonna interject with one more part of this. Because everything we put out into the real world is an additional object. Like, there's a very famous designer, I forgot his name. He's a Jewish designer and graphic designer, and he helped create really great things in the past. But it's very counter to Judaism, being that the things he created were idolized by people, and in Judaism there is no such thing as like an idol. Like, you're not supposed to have any like
right.
idols because you're supposed to worship God, and
Right.
anything else is whatever. So there's like a little counterintuitiveness to design and Judaism, at least religion, because we're trying to
Hmm.
create things that people love, but they're not treating. And I have a question after this about code and Bitcoin and
Sure.
crypto, but you know, how do you see that? How do you see we like, I guess, play into that? Is that
Yeah.
something that you're comfortable with, or is that something that like you disagree with, or is there like a counterpoint to that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you look at the world, think that it is created, it's beautiful, right? And I think as we get to take part in that and design certain aspects of the world around us, there's this, I don't know, there's this view I have where we should try and hold true to what we already see existing as much as possible. That's personally why I'm a fan of, like you said, should we just leave it? Well, no, I actually think we should go back. I think things used to be better quality, look better. I think they used to be more beautiful in almost every way. Like, you think about architecture, art, I think
Mm-hmm.
everything used to be, a lot higher quality, built for longevity. And then somewhere along the way of industrialism, everything started getting fast, cheap, quick, uglier. Like, and so I don't think we should just leave it as, I actually would prefer to go back to the
Mm-hmm.
way things were. But obviously, I'm not saying we want to remove all technological advances. We it would have been better to take what we learned and what we knew and then brought new technology in to enhance and improve that.
Mm.
But instead, we kind of just tore everything down and replaced it with, in my opinion, like a inferior alternative. So
Can you give me like an example of that? Like, and you
yeah,
mentioned
yeah. I mean,
architecture.
architecture, yeah, sure. There's buildings that have been standing and in perfect condition for over 1,000 years. The ways those were built, I'm not talking about the I wouldn't say there were like savory cultural practices, like a lot of human suffering went into that. That's not good. Right? We don't want that at all.
Of course not. No, no,
But
no.
in terms of the design, right? Things were approached for longevity, for sustainability to last a long time and to accomplish like a unique set of goals. And that's why they were built. And I look at buildings now and I'm like, okay, there's another rectangle. Like, they'll tear it down in 20 years and they'll build a different rectangle. And yeah, I guess it's a scaling issue. I don't know. That's just one example. I guess another one would be writing or possibly art. I think because of the cost that used to be associated with publishing, writing, there was such a higher level of quality coming out because they just wouldn't publish anything that wasn't really great. So I would say, I think it's good that anyone can publish anything at any time, but it creates so much information you have to sift through now to find those gems where Whereas before, even in the 70s and 80s, I still prefer books like to blogs, just because the level of quality is so much higher when you have the cost of printing kind of guiding the final output.
Mhm.
So I don't know. How do you apply that to a digital space? I haven't thought too much about it, but there's something about, that's like the classic, like quality versus accessibility. So
So that it's so great that you pointed that out because it also I think ties in a little bit to a Twitter feud that we just had about AI and
yes.
creativity. And you're talking a lot about like the humanity of how these structures were created. And maybe it's because of a devotion to a higher power. That's significantly a huge part of it, at least a lot of cases, right? A lot of them are used for religious purposes or driven by religious purposes. And
Yeah. Can,
now,
can I say one more thing on
yeah,
that?
yeah,
So I guess one thing I should have mentioned is I think as a designer, I I do better to assume that the world was created rationally and structured and with order. So and I think if you approach design with that mindset, I think my work comes out better. And I think a lot of things come out better when you approach even just life with that mindset of this was all created for a purpose with rational order in mind, and we just have to uncover what that was, right? And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the universities, the first universities were established for education with that in mind. The idea was the universe and world has been created rationally and structured and in order around us. Let's start to dive into that and use science to uncover what is actually here and how it's working under that framework. So I don't know. I just find that framework really helpful in design it would be like if you like turned on a computer and just, and disregarded the fact that it's been programmed by people for a particular reason and in order and structured rationally. And, it's the same with everything. So yeah, I just find that worldview really helpful in design personally.
yeah. I think that you're correct about 99% of the time on that, except Adobe software is not structured with any structure at all. I mean, I get errors like we
Not even
crashed.
Figma,
Sorry.
not even Figma by Adobe. Shout out to
Are you wearing a Figma hat?
yeah,
Oh my god.
I love Figma by
I
Adobe.
have my quarrels with Figma, but it is a great tool and it's built by great people. So shout out to Figma.
You have to
So
blur out the logo, or is that they're not a sponsor?
not yet.
Not yet, not yet.
I think I said in the past I hate Figma, so I don't think they're ever going to sponsor the podcast. But
Yeah,
YOLO. So I actually want to go back onto that topic a little bit because, like I said before, like religion drove so much devotion to then spending time. Like this is the effort somebody's going to put in, thinking that they're going to get something back in return, and that they can bring about the beauty of what already exists. But now we have AI overlords. We have AI making decisions on behalf of people. And in a lot of cases, some people think that AI is sentient already from the Google issue with Lambda, I think, which is now probably way surpassed with GPT-4. But it's interesting to me because we used to think that because something was so detailed, so oriented, it has a higher status because people put so much more effort into it. But AI can do digital things so fast, so
yeah,
much better than people in some cases. It can write, it
yeah.
can now use images and video. So I want to continue that feud a little bit and go back and forth and spar a little bit.
I think that's a weakness of it, by the way,
Yeah, yeah.
that it's
I
too
think, yeah.
fast. Yeah,
So, yeah, so that was my kind of problem with it. Like, I love your point about the humanity, about all the creation and effort we put into things in the past and bringing that back.
Mhm.
I think AI might be pushing us away from that in some
Mhm.
cases. Some cases it can be an alternative to generating ideas, but then because they're not human created from the human created there, they're just an adaptation of somebody else using somebody else's idea.
Yeah,
It's just we're now stuck in a smaller cycle than when we were before, when people were just discovering like sharing ideas about religion, sharing ideas about architecture, sharing these mathematical formulas around the world, where it's slowly evolved allegedly over time.
yeah.
And now it's like boom, you can do anything, almost anything with GPT-4.
hmm Yeah, I don't think AI is as cool or as sexual things. I'm sorry. I think it's really fun. It's cool to play with. I use it like every day pretty much. I'm experimenting with every. I think AI is humanity. Like it,
Mm.
it's it doesn't work super well. It's flawed. It's limited. Like it sounds like a human to me, and and and
Yeah.
it can't think very well. Like I don't know. As far as sentient, I don't see how that's possible. I'm not an AI expert, but to me, AI searches humanity and it parses text and assembles the best, what it thinks is the best options it finds. The text it's parsing and what it finds is human generated, right? It's not. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mitchell. I could be totally wrong here. It doesn't create new information. It reassembles existing information. Now, maybe you could, I'm sure someone could argue a point that no, it's creating new information that didn't exist before. I don't think I've seen examples of that. So to me, a human generating creative ideas, I don't, maybe it's because I can't see the references their mind is processing, but it seems like they do come from nowhere. Like, I don't know, something about AI, knowing that it's parsing that has been human generated, it's finding the best text that's matching, the prompt, and then it's meshing stuff together that already existed. There's nothing new being created. And so to me, it seems very limited. It seems like it would be limited to what information we give it. And I know there are examples of it identifying new molecular structures, new things in medicine that we did not know before.
Yeah, AlphaGo,
But,
I think, or
but it
whatever it's
was
called.
still parsing information we gave it.
Yeah.
So it didn't create new information. Am I right there?
Yeah, yes and
I'm asking
no.
because I know you
It's
worked a little closer to this stuff than I
yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah. So yes and no. When I was working on AI stuff and redesign the Watson Studio platform, we were told by researchers and managers and designers and developers a lot of these things weren't possible. That was only a couple years ago. Now they're all possible and more. And so it made me realize that a lot of people really don't understand the capabilities of how fast AI is getting. And Pascal and I both worked on the same group where we can see all the stuff being created. And I worked with specifically, like I almost actually worked with the researchers that created the Watson bot that like went on Jeopardy and like work with them on something else. And it's so fascinating, this technology to me. But to answer your question, the AI just rearranges information in a new way, but it has to be told it.
Mhm.
However, it also begs the question, isn't that what we do too? And then, because like,
Yeah. Well, that's like I was
yeah.
saying. To me, it is humanity. It's like, you know,
Well, to me, it's a mirror of humanity, and we're so close to getting it to be human, but I think we're never gonna get there because, well, I think we'll get there, but I think it's going to pass us in a spectrum of what is humanity, what is not humanity, because humanity, there has to be something human about it to be humanity, right? I don't know exactly how to articulate it yet, but the craftsmanship is something that we value as humans, right? The definition of a human is what a bipedal mammal that can walk on two legs, that has a certain jaw type. I heard even that like we are defined actually by a bone in the ear from most animals or something. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
definitions of like what a human is to a lot of people. But AI can be everything and nothing at once, right? It can be everything that we want
I
it to
don't know.
be.
I feel like I don't know. Does AI even think? Like,
Well,
okay, so,
it doesn't think the same way, but it thinks just not in a way that we have yet. I think it will be able to soon. When as soon as we are able to unlock quantum for just more meaningful tasks, like as soon as you get the ability to process information as fast and as much as a human brain can, I don't see why it couldn't.
well, okay, so I guess one of the reasons I'm skeptical
Mm-hmm.
is based around how closed these models seem to be, like seeding in the AI. And it just seems like they're so limited. And what I mean by that is like you mentioned Watson, right? And what is the Go AI?
I think it's
Um,
AlphaGo. That's the Google
AlphaGo.
thing, right?
So my understanding of AlphaGo is like that's a really powerful AI, right?
Mm.
And but all it knows is how to play this game really, really well. It doesn't know what a Go board is. It doesn't know what the pieces look like. It doesn't know that it's trying to defeat a player. Like all it knows is these strings of text, and you give it one string as a prompt, it and it searches the system and gives you the next best output. But it has no spatial awareness. It has no awareness of the game outside of these strings of text. And that's where my skepticism comes
Mhm.
from. It's like, even if it were embodied as a robot, it wouldn't know how to play. It wouldn't know how to move a piece or a board or spatial awareness. There's a sense of like self-awareness and it can't read the player's movements. Like it can't do anything except tell it what move was made. It will tell you the next best move. And that's all formatted in these strings of text. And so to me, that's not thinking at all. It's just like
Mhm.
it has no awareness of anything outside of these movements. And that's like not that impressive to me. I'm so sorry.
Okay, so I would push back a little bit on that, not
Okay.
because I'm an expert in AlphaGo, but technically it does understand spatial awareness in the sense that it know because it has to use image recognition to know the player's moves. So it has to actually have a camera attached to it. So it has one type of sense, which is
Oh,
vision.
okay.
So I think that part of it is like enabling all the senses. So there's already work being done on smell and taste, which I think is disgusting in some cases, but I think it's really cool. Like imagine licking your phone and tasting like a treat before you buy it on Amazon or something like that. But I agree with you in some degree there, though. I don't want to be too unfair and be like, oh no, that's because I think that you do have a
Yeah.
point. But I think that as we keep developing these things, all we're doing is essentially layering one on top of the other, which is kind of like how the brain works, essentially. Right? It's different pieces that do different functions that work in tandem together to create an output, or like understand the input and then give you an output that sends off to the rest of the system. So I don't want to like argue too much about it, but how do we then move forward with AI and maintaining creativity where we enable AI to do the best it can do, but also we enable humans to do the best we can do because we shouldn't, in my opinion, replace humans altogether. We should augment humans. That was IBM's goal originally, to augment humanity, not replace it with AI. So can you talk a little bit to that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, creativity seems to be the main use case right now, getting pushed really hard. And I certainly see a good use case for that, like for designers to adopt some of these new tools coming out. I I think I think I mentioned this to you before, but I view all the AI tools coming out as like an amplifier. So multiplication, not addition. And so you have a lot of designers where creativity is not their thing, right? They don't they don't come up with a lot of creative ideas, and that's fine. That's one skill set that's needed in design. I don't know if AI is going to help them that much with creativity. I think for those that are currently creative, it's going to amplify that ability they already have. And for those that aren't, I think it's going to amplify the things that they're really good at. So it's going to help with efficiency, the
Mhm.
speed of work. Obviously, it's going to help with thinking, right? Thinking of solutions to a problem. I think it's going to help people with what they're already good at. I don't know if it's going to I don't work as addition, right? I don't think it's going to add new skills to to what they can currently do.
One thing that I remember talking to somebody actually at IBM, he was a data scientist, one of my favorite data scientists, Stefan van der Stok, and he told me he worked on an AI that can code itself, so it would like actually rebuild and add stuff to itself. But he
Yeah.
said that it was too stupid to like do something well. Like it can code a bunch of stuff, but then not well.
Mhm.
I was able to code a framework component by asking GPT-4 or GPT-3 at the time, ChatGPT, to code it for me. And then I said, I don't like the code. It's too long for me to copy. Can you simplify it? And it actually refactored itself.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a variety of things that are going to be enabled that aren't currently enabled for people who don't have technical expertise, can then get that expertise from a
Yeah.
chatbot and do it for them, but also in the career space as well, like you said, enable further creativity and whatnot. I know we're already up on time. Do you have a minute more?
I have as
Or
much time as you want. Yeah.
oh, awesome. So we got 3 more hours. Cool. So
I can,
welcome to the Lex Friedman.
yeah. Well, okay. So on that note, okay. Again, I think it's going to help me personally a lot, and I'm a fan.
Mhm.
But the response I'm seeing is just hilarious to me. So give me just a gut check here. So
Sure.
someone like uses AI to create the game Pong. This is a game that we made
Okay.
50, 60 years ago.
Mhm.
And then they freak out that they made this game that got programmed 60 years ago. Is that impressive to you? Like, should something to be excited about? Because when I see that, I'm like, but we made that like 60 years ago. Like, we already did that. So you just did it again. And I don't know. I like,
Mhm.
why is that exciting? Like, what, try and help me here. Like,
Hmm.
I'm looking for like,
Okay.
not just new ways to do something we did a long time ago. Like, I don't know. To me, that's like, why are we recreating stuff we've had for a very long time? Like, well, so I don't know. Maybe they're out there, but like, what are the cool use cases where this is net new, right? This like, okay, I did an example of this yesterday. This guy, he gave ChatGPT like $100. Did you see that?
No, didn't see
He
that.
gave it
No.
$100 and he said, like, build me a business model online. I'll try and send you the
Yeah,
thread.
please,
It was
please.
amazing.
I'll link it
He said,
below.
like, build me a business model online that I can, and here's, I have $100 budget. He gave it all these parameters. It actually came up with a business model around like referrals for green energy adoption. Like, it actually built a business model for him. He actually implemented it. He had AI make his logo and web
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
instantly.
Mhm.
And I think the end of day one, he had turned his $100 into $133,
That's
which is like a
amazing.
huge like margin.
That's amazing. Wow.
um,
Wow. See, yeah. So I guess your Pong example, it isn't a striking like wow, like holy crap. But what's cool about it is, okay, now the AI is able to do tasks that we thought were very complicated, that it can do its own, even just with a very simple instruction. Imagine being a child and doing that, right? But then
yeah,
tweaking a couple of things and then having your, like, that's back to the creativity thing. Like the child can then use AI to be creative and leverage it to make maybe the same thing in essence, but tweaked and guided a different way that can address something else. So
I
that's
see.
like the
So it
small thing.
enables creativity.
I think, yeah, I think it
Yeah,
definitely enables creativity. I think it also hurts creativity in a certain way. But yeah, so then your example about what you just said about the business plan and then the AI generated logos and stuff. I mean, didn't wasn't it you who tweeted Fiverr is going to replace AI?
yeah. I think yeah, fiber with AI that would be a deal breaker. Like
Yeah,
we'd all be let go tomorrow. I think. But
essentially.
well,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
so. Yeah, I just try and joke about the
Hmm.
whole like designers are getting replaced by AI or
Yeah.
will if you don't adopt AI. I just kind of laugh about that because I've been hearing that since I started design. It was, first it was free resources, files you can download. Then there was like the Bootstrap and Foundation years. Bootstrap is going to replace the need for designers. And then it was things like Fiverr and all those really cheap services. And
Mhm.
I don't know. The historic data is not frightening me when I hear that. I'm just, yeah, I've been hearing that since
Yeah.
for like 15 years. And I realize this is different because this is a much, much, much more
Mhm.
powerful automation tool. But even then, if I play out the scenarios in my head, it's like, okay, you have these big companies, they have designers and they have project managers or product managers. Who gets replaced by AI? And everyone jumps straight to the designer. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it be better to have a designer use the AI that is familiar with design, the latest there, familiar with user experience and the latest there, and is an expert in those things, and then just teach them management? I don't know. To me, a designer with AI, and then that also acts as the PM is much better than no designer and just a PM with AI. So,
Or how about
again,
just replace the PM with an AI?
yeah, yeah. I just think it's funny when everyone jumps straight to, okay, this is
Yeah.
a creative tool of AI
Yeah, I
application
think
of AI.
that It's
So the
definitely,
designer gets
yeah.
replaced, and I just don't see where a situation where that makes sense. But what I do see making sense, and I tweeted this the other day too, I think CEOs should be replaced by AI. That makes way more sense to me. Because
Mm,
I mean, if you think about what their job is, all these inputs they have coming in and have to make decisions on, that seems like a much better use of it. If you're looking at like how do you augment a company with AI,
mm.
I would make the CEO an AI and possibly even like open source it to some of the employees. So you have this AI and the employee get to actually work on the model for the CEO.
Mm.
I don't know. That'd be an interesting experiment.
That'd be so interesting having a CEO as AI and then a DAO as like the organizational
Yeah.
structure maybe,
Hmm.
and then like there's an incentive to like help the system run better and help the CEO make better decisions by helping build the company. I can see that being a very interesting experiment. We should do that. Let's do
Yeah.
that.
We get
Well,
fired on day one.
we're all fired. Well, I think that eventually the AI, because now we have robotics, like Boston Robotics, right? What is it called?
Boston Dynamics.
Boston Dynamics. There's now another company that's competing with Tesla on the AI robots. It's going to
Oh
start
yeah,
out
the little
obviously,
4 foot ones.
yeah, little dudes,
Little.
short kings. But I think that it's gonna. I really do think that it's going to eventually replace us. Not maybe in our career lifetime, maybe, but we have to then build skills that are not replaceable by AI. And it's very difficult because AI is just regurgitating everything that we do faster than we can learn it.
Right.
So I guess what skills then would you need to then be a great operator of AI as a creative person?
Yeah, yeah. Well, just to push back on that last thought a little bit, this is I think I mentioned earlier the argument from over efficiency, right? And if AI is, let's say it goes quantum and it's able to do so that thing I mentioned earlier, the guy put in $100 on day one, he got 130 back. Let's say a big company decides to do that a billion times a day and they're making $30 billion a day.
Mhm.
And hey, why not do that a trillion times a day? Because you can. It's AI and quantum. Well, that at some point you hit this horizon, like you, you hit this point where it's so efficient, it works so well, it's just extracting everything out of the economy immediately, and all you have then is just total implosion, right? Like there is nothing at that point. So I don't know. There's this view I have. If it were to do that, it would work so well and be so efficient that the economy that the company is relying on to make money would just self implode because it would wipe out everything. And so I don't know. If it truly goes that way, I don't think the company would be incentivized to turn that on because it would essentially it would be so valuable that it immediately diminished the value of money altogether. So does that make sense? Do you see what I'm saying?
I
It would
think
be
it
such
would
a
make sense
it would
if
generate so much wealth and value that all value would become meaningless. And so they actually wouldn't do well as a company, like to do that.
so. I guess I can't follow why it would be like the value of money would be meaningless to other people because if they're getting paid by this system that is done everything, then you're just letting the system run itself and kind of keep going. The system has to have not always, but typically, I believe typically, AI systems are using like an incentive program to kind of measure if something is the right answer or the wrong answer. So a lot of machine learning models, you would say, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is not a dog, this is a cat. You go through that a lot, and that would tell the robot, if they get it wrong, they lose a point. If they get it right, they get a point. So it's kind of like that system, but at a large scale, much more complex for this overarching AI. Eventually, it's going to get very comfortable, I guess. So in that case, it has no incentive to change, and I don't think that anyone would be able to stop it at that point. I think we're doomed. Basically, what I'm saying is, Elon Musk, please don't do this. But I I guess it would then ask us to like step out of this realm of like being just efficient because in my opinion, efficiency is the opposite of good design. It's the nemesis of design, really, of good design. because you're operating as so a designer is someone who is operating as a facilitator, making things in a lot of cases beautiful, but also more efficient, right? We have a utility aspect of our job, but efficiency then eventually evolves, and I've never seen it not evolve into it, but and sometimes it can get out of it, but evolves strictly into like a business thing, business oriented. It's always like about how do you profit, how do you get more users, how do you grow, and it never goes backwards because it's too hard to go backwards. It would actually hurt the company, and then it would shrink the company. So the company can't risk that. It's too big of a risk to then the shareholders. The company will go down, get bought, and die. And that's not the incentive of the company. The company is to grow and continue to grow and become a cancer essentially to other companies and others in society. So that's kind of my spiel about efficiency, and good design is like we are also trying to be efficient, but I guess what is efficient if there's no need for the efficiency at all? Like it's just done for you completely. Like I think the movie Her is a good example of that. Right? Don't they like just write or something like they don't have like real jobs or something like that? I don't remember what it was, but there's
No,
like I don't there's like a
he works at
movie.
like a greeting card store. Like he comes up with
Right.
the sayings. Yeah.
Right, but like if the AI is so smart and it can do everything for us, there's nothing for us to do, right? It's meaningless, and then we're just creating stuff, but but there's no pressure, there's no suffering like in Brave New World. The end of it, like, not to spoil it, spoiler alert, 100 years from now, right? 100 years behind, he kills himself. There's like no
Okay, but so
reason.
that's what I'm saying though. So if that happened, then that basically pulls down the whole economy, right?
Mm.
Because we've been replaced. We don't have jobs anymore. But
Oh,
companies are outputting things that cost money. And so that's what I was trying to get at was we don't have money anymore because we don't have jobs, but they need people to spend money on what AI is outputting. And so that's what I was trying to say was
mm,
at some point it becomes so efficient that it pulls down their bottom line. And now I understand there's
mm.
the view that, well, we would have other jobs, but it's like, well, okay, maybe. I'm talking about like the super hype AI evangelist that says like, this is going to replace everything, like 70% of jobs. Okay. If it does, people don't have money to buy the products that those companies are using AI to output. And so that's what I was trying to say was the
I
efficiency becomes a revenue killer, like at some point, right?
Well, for a long time we've been using AI. Like we've been using AI for like about 60 years or so,
60 years. Yeah.
something like that. And we still have money, right? But you're talking about a level of AI that we can't even conceive yet because we have no idea how to build it, but it could technically exist in the future.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you that like it would like create efficiency into obsolescence, or is that even a
Yes.
word? Like to make us all obsolete. But then I'm sure it would figure out a way to sustain itself. If it's that smart to make it the like humanity obsolete, then it's pretty damn sure it's gonna just figure out a way to like just mine its own materials, build its own robots, Terminator style, take over the world, whatever. Probably. But humanity always wins in the end, right?
I think so.
Even though we're flawed, I think that we'll still win in the end. Yeah, so I think this was a great pod. Really enjoyed this chat, Jed. Really appreciate it.
Oh, me too, man. I hope we can do it again soon. There's so
Gotta
much
come on
to
again.
talk about. I would
Yeah,
love to.
we gotta have a Pascal when he's available to come on the pod too. So all three of us can chat. But yeah, really appreciate it.
Give my best to Pascal. Let's do it again soon. And yeah, thanks, Mitch. It was good catching up.